Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Berlin Select Board meeting for Monday, February 27th, 2023. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order and remind folks that meetings of the Berlin Select Board are recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access Channel and YouTube. Your voice and your image and your telephone number may be recorded. Also of note is that later on, I think we're going to be joined by actually both the Finance Committee and the School Committee. So this will be a joint meeting at some point relatively soon into our meeting. Let's start with the approval of the minutes from February 13th.
So I can make a motion to accept the minute meetings from February 13th, 2023.
And I'll second that, but I did find a typo. Mary, if you could just delete after it says the board voted unanimously to, and just cross off Hawkins because he wasn't there. Thank you.
I'm sure I would have voted on it if I was there, but you're right, I was not.
I'm sure you were.
With that adjustment, I think we might be ready to vote. I will abstain since I was not at the meeting to know fully if the minutes are accurate or not.
So I'll vote Keefe, aye.
Stone eye. Great.
The next thing is if there are members of the public that would like to make a comment before a meeting, if you'd raise your hand to be recognized. And that while we're looking on that, we will start setting up for our first hearing, which I believe is the Historic Commission's request for a letter of intent for their upcoming MHC, Massachusetts Housing Commission grant, which you're excited about. I think June is in the audience.
Yeah, well, they're coming forward, Scott. I'll just give a little bit of background. This is a town meeting article for May to put a preservation restriction on the Bullard House. Part of the condition of applying for a Mass Historic grant is to have that preservation restriction. And we need to basically submit the grant prior to town meeting. So a letter of intent would need to be executed that says the select board intends to request this preservation restriction at town meeting. Did I get that right, June?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm having trouble starting my video, but maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think we could be fine if you get it working. We'll see you when you speak. Otherwise, people just see your name.
Okay.
Or the error saying you don't have a working camera. And so this is just making us sort of put on on the annual meeting warrant an article to put a request of preservation restriction on that building. And that'll take an Historic Commission will likely follow up on that once assuming it passes at town meeting.
Yes, then it can go to record. Actually, I'm a little in doubt if we have to, I think we can record that if and when we're awarded, the grant.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, they wouldn't make any sense for us to,
Right.
to place that on there if we weren't. And the letter of intent is a pretty simple paragraph, and we can screen share that if you want to. I gave it to Mary for us.
Yep. I'm actually pulling it up unless you have it, Mary. For page 48, I believe. Oh, she's beating me to it.
58.
Right.
That's the restriction itself, but the letter of intent is just a paragraph.
And June, to be clear, we've not done something like this before because I thought the Bullard House might have already been a historic property.
It's definitely designated as a historic building on the National Register, but a preservation restriction is different.
Okay.
It protects the property, including the land, in perpetuity. It's to preserve it, to protect it, to maintain it, and also to not to allow certain alterations to the historic fabric.
And as Kristen was pointing out, because the letter's in front of us, or the template is in front of us, pointing out that we would file this if awarded the grant.
That's right.
So-
Well, this needs to go forward
Right.
now.
Right.
And I assembled all of those land records and
Yep.
surveys. That's something I could do fairly easily because I was a
Yep.
title examiner once upon a time. And so that's all ready if the letter of intent is acceptable.
Chris, Peg, do you have any questions?
No.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Is there a motion then?
Motion to approve the letter of intent.
To be signed by chair,
Yeah.
supposed to all of us?
Well, I didn't look. Was there all?
I
It
mean, I
doesn't
think it-
really designate, but I think it's up to you who the authorized signer would be.
So that should be the select board chair.
Okay, I'll
Yep.
make the motion for the select board chair to sign the letter of intent.
I'll second it.
Great. I think this will be an easy one then. Hawkins, aye.
Chief, aye.
Stone Eye.
Okay, well, thank
Passes.
you.
Yep, Mary, let me know when that is ready to be signed. And then if somehow I'm not there, timely pester me. I don't feel bad about that. And I do try very hard to remember.
June, I just wanted to make one quick notation. If you look at the next page in the documents that you sent, it does show a certified copy of the town meeting vote as an example.
Yes,
Do you wait until the town meeting vote then to send this whole package in, or you send in what you have at the time of the grant application?
I'll make sure with the grant rep at MHC. But I believe we send this letter of intent and the accompanying documents, you know, the surveys and the deed and any restrictions or rights of way. I think we can send that in fairly soon. And then we can actually go forward with writing our warrant article.
Okay. And the only reason I asked June was I didn't know if in that letter of intent, we should add a sentence that says this is going to be voted at May town meeting. So if you want to just let us know if there's something that needs to be added, that would be great.
Let's see. It does say the preservation restriction shall be recorded under the provisions of, chapter 184. So it implies the warrant article, but we could put that in.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I was just going to say, if you want to check it out and get back to us,
Yes,
I just wanted to make sure we give you everything you need.
Okay. I can
Great.
clarify that too.
Thanks, June.
Okay, are we
Um,
on that, or do you
I
need
think
any information about the grant itself, or?
Not at the moment. I think you guys
Okay.
are doing great. I read some of the timeline stuff. I look forward to seeing how this goes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
Thanks.
very much.
Hi, June.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So our next hearing of the evening is the Community Preservation Act presentation of their town meeting warrant articles. I'm assuming for us to vote on our support of them at this point.
Yep. So they've presented before FinCom,
Yep.
and this is their opportunity to speak to the select board about the projects they're putting forward on the town meeting warrant.
Is Wayne in the audience? Wayne Texera?
No,
Do not
Yeah.
I
see
don't
him.
see him.
Okay. Very quickly then, there'll be an article that's always on the warrant that deals with the budget, and it allocates 10% of the funds that we've collected in the previous year to, well, anticipated funds to 10% for housing, 10% for open space and rec, 10% for historic, and 5% for administration, and the rest goes into a balanced reserve that we hold that is available to us later in the year if we so desire. So that's the first article. The second article would be to take funds that were raised in fiscal 22 that we ended up with more revenue than we anticipated. So as a result, we've got this excess that's somewhere around, well, I mean, actually, there's probably about $10,000 that can go into each of those three accounts that are the designated reserves for those three categories. And June feels comfortable about putting an article on the warrant that specifies that those funds are going to be put into those accounts rather than just doing it independently. So that would be the second article. The third article is an article that the Ag Commission put on a request, a year and a half ago. And we asked them to postpone because we wanted to allocate as much money as we had for the opportunity to buy the Dudley Pond, Horseshoe Pond parcel. And they agreed, and they would like about $45,000 to put a fence up at the community garden to keep critters out of two-legged and four-legged critters that tend to bother the garden. So we supported that project initially, but of course asked them to delay, and we still feel pretty comfortable about that one. They've come in with some pretty good numbers on a couple of occasions, and Carl's been doing a good job keeping us informed. The next article is for a pavilion at South Common. I know the rec committee came before you and asked about the possibility of locating a structure like that on that site. And I guess you had to determine whether the school owned the property or the town did, and we decided, I guess, that the school didn't own any property there yet. So they've asked for $150,000. They've given us good hard figures for the majority of the project. Kristen and I and the committee have talked about the need to add a line to the proposals so that proponents come in with some anticipated long-term maintenance costs, perhaps, that would be, imposed upon the town if some of these projects go forward. So we begin to realize what the long-term costs are as well as just the upfront costs. So that's something that we'll probably try to address with this project. But we feel comfortable with that one. And then the final project is more complex and not as concrete in its totality yet. We've got an opportunity to buy the property at 72 Carter. It's 8.5 acres. There's a single family home on it right now with 3 bedrooms. We're interested in the possibility of using housing money out of the CPA to protect the house as a long-term affordable housing unit. And then we also want to protect the open space, perhaps 6.5 acres out of the 8.5, and turn that over to the Conservation Commission so it could be protected in perpetuity there. At first, we thought that the town might try to acquire the property and work through a strategy to upgrade it, working with somebody like Habitat for Humanity, but that seems like it might be rather complex. So we've backed away from that. One of the other things we thought about was creating an additional lot on the parcel and turning that lot, a vacant lot, over to Habitat so that they might create an additional housing unit that would be affordable. But in order to do that, we'd need frontage and we'd have to create a road, and that adds to the expense, and that began to be problematic. So we've backed away from that. We're looking now into the possibility of 2 options. One would simply be that we'd ask the owner if they'd be willing to have the town buy the 6.5 acres independently from the house and the 80,000 square feet that it would take to create a lot there. And if there's a figure that we could agree on for just the acquisition of the open space, which we protect. The other option, we've seen this in some other towns with the communities have used CPA money for housing and acquired a deed. What do we want to call it? Well, it's a deed rider essentially that would impose language that would keep the house as an affordable unit, but not be owned by the town in any point. Simply buy the deed rider, have the current owner sell it with that deed rider on it, so it remained as an affordable unit. And that seems to be the step that we'll probably try to pursue right now. We'll talk to some of the communities that have tried to utilize that in the past. So overall, it looks like we might use 100,000 out of open space and, maybe 175 out of housing. Right now, there's about 190,000 in the community housing portion of CPA. So we've got the balance that we need for that. The balance in the open space fund is more than the 45,000, so that we'd be able to accommodate that project with the money that's in CPA for open space. And the balance that's in our account for what we call a balance reserve is adequate to cover the 150,000. And we met with June last week and she felt pretty comfortable about using those figures. And then if we needed to pick up some miscellaneous costs for survey work or lawyers' fees or whatever, we could pull that out of the housing partnerships funds, which the planning board controls. And right now we've got a substantial amount of money in that. So utilizing 15 or 20,000 to cover those miscellaneous costs would be easy to do out of that account. So we'll have to, at some point, I think we'll probably come to you and ask to be able to speak with town council sooner rather than later in order to get a little more advice as to the deed rider question and whether that's hazardous to our health as a community or whether we should try to pursue it.
Have you gotten any advice, Tim, from Stephanie at?
Yeah, I talked to Stephanie and actually 3 of the staff joined us and we had a good conversation about what they'd seen other communities do.
Okay.
At first we were thinking about, does the town acquire it and then sell it? But I really don't. I think the committee feels and the planning board feels as well that the town ownership of a piece of property like this probably is more than we want to bite off. That we're better off if we can add funds to the total sale of the property, so there's an incentive to keep it affordable without us ever having to acquire it. So we feel good about that approach. So we've talked to Stephanie. And we've also talked to, like I said, the director for housing for Habitat for Humanity for North Central Worcester County. Another article that isn't on the warrant, but would be next year, but requires some commitment on the part of the town this year, is an opportunity to work with Central Mass Regional Planning. They're going to hire a housing coordinator and it's going to serve probably 5 or 6 communities. They reached out to us to ask if we'd be interested. The first year is covered by a grant and there wouldn't be any expense. The second and third years would be covered by some money from CPA, maybe 10,000 a year. And then the remainder would come out of the Housing Partnership Fund for housing. So it would give us 4 or 5 hours a week on a sustained basis for 3 years, someone dedicated to just housing issues. And as we look at your later agenda item, placing some people on the housing trust, It would mean that in July, when this person started, there'd be someone to work with that individual, with that committee, that trust, and get them up and running and up to speed a lot quicker than they'd ever do independently, I would imagine. So we thought that that was a logical thing to do. So there'll probably be more discussion about that. It doesn't involve a town meeting warrant article this year, but it would in the next 2 years after this.
So Tim, can you be more specific about where this house is? It's on Carter?
Right across from Wheeler's Garage,
Okay,
and the land sweeps up almost to the top of Powder House Hill. So it's 8.5 acres. Wiedemann's property, the house that's across from the library that sits up on the rise, that has 7.5 acres that come up and intercept the piece that comes up from the other end of Carter off of 72. And from Wiedemann's, you get access to the town land that Powder House is actually on. So at some point, it might be worth our while to have a conversation with them about access across that. And then Faith's land is in between Wiedemann's and the town hall land and the Bullard House land. So, you know, there's opportunity there as well.
And 70, sorry,
Go ahead.
to say at 72 Carter, the warrant article you're looking at is going to be sort of almost like we did with, on a much smaller scale, the Horseshoe Pond property, where we're approving some money with the hopes that there's potentially, you know, you find a way to do it cheaper, or you find some grants or other stuff. And so that your warrant articles for the maximum you'll use, but if you don't end up using a chunk of it, it comes back, correct?
I think what we'll try to do is come to an agreement with the homeowner prior to town meeting, so we know exactly what the dollar amount from each of the two categories is. And that way, it's cut and dry, it's clear, you know, and in the end, the goal would be, I mean, I think they want $400,000 for the property. The goal would be to in a housing unit that's affordable has to sell for like $265 in Berlin, I think, if it's a 3-bedroom. So the goal would be to take that number, drop it by whatever a third-party developer would need to make some of the modifications to it and come away with the profit that's reasonable, and then still add the CPA money to make the current homeowner whole, or even a little more than whole. So that, you know, they might even come away at the end of the day with a little more than 400,000 if they'd be willing to accommodate us to get that affordable unit. So the housing trust, you've got 2 people that you're gonna that have applied so far. Eloise is waiting to hear from the Attorney General as to whether or not a town clerk can serve on a housing trust. If they say yes, because of her experience with the housing partnership, to me, she's a strong candidate. I mean, she, you know, it makes a lot of sense. And then there's a select board members. So essentially you'd end up with 1 empty position, and there are 3 individuals that I've talked to over the last year that I think would be interested still. So I think we can find the 5th member. And if Eloise can't, I believe that we've got 2 out of the other 3 that have indicated an interest in the past. So I'm comfortable that we'll be able to populate that committee with that trust without too much trouble in the next month, if, you know, with the additional people you need beyond the ones you've got now.
So Tim, I have a bunch of questions. That was a lot of information, really,
bunch?
without anything to follow. So if I could just summarize, or try to summarize, and then let me know what I missed. So your first request is for $30,000 from funds from fiscal year 22 to be split evenly amongst housing, open space, rec, and the third item, correct?
The first article is for 60,000 or so to be spent. That's that's the Community Preservation Act fiscal year 2024 budget. 30 for administrative, 396 for budgeted reserve, almost 61,000 for each of the three categories: community housing, community historic preservation, and open space. The total is somewhere around $609,000, which is what we've got as a result of the fees we collected and the fact that we got almost 100% match from the state. So that's the first article.
So the second one, you talked about a fence for the community garden for approximately 45,000. Are you also in that amount including any long-term maintenance? Because, you know, unfortunately fences fall down, then things
No,
happen.
and that's what we were talking about.
Okay.
They've given us a figure that's, I mean, we've got about $3,000 beyond, I think, or $2,500 beyond what the quotes are. But I mean, you can't tell what's going on with material costs right now. The difficulty with something like a fence, or I mean, what do you put in? You know, that's the trouble. What is the annual maintenance cost for a fence that's got a 30-year life expectancy? What's the maintenance cost on a pavilion that's got, you know, whatever length of time as an estimated lifespan?
Right.
There are maintenance costs for the pavilion that I think are easy to identify, like, you know, removing snow from the walkway if we want to continue to keep it open during the winter months, and, you know, shoveling off the cement area, that sort of thing, and upkeep for any plantings that might be there. So I think we can articulate what those would probably be. The fence to me is a little more complex. I'm not sure how you put a price tag on maintenance for a fence that's a steel fence that, you know, has a life expectancy of X number of years. So
Okay.
that's a
All right,
trickier
so-
one.
All right, so 45 for the fence and then 150 for the pavilion,
Right.
and additional long-term maintenance on that. And then the property, could you give a total cost of that? Because I was trying to write it down. You were talking about, you know, there was 100,000 for something and 175,000 and then an additional 150,000. So
No, I think what we're really looking at is 175 and 100. And those are still, they may still fluctuate, but both those amounts are well within the budget that we've got for CPA for this year.
so 250?
275.
275. And you were talking, so about the land that goes up behind the house and then just goes that way into the center of the town. That's all ledge, correct? Is that even, or it's Berlin land, it's ledge or wet. Is there any possibility to build anything up there if the town decided no on this one?
I would never bet in town that a piece is not buildable.
Okay,
You and I both know that we've seen plenty of parcels
I know,
that people have said no one will ever build there.
and up it goes.
And
Yep.
furthermore, as the technology changes, we know, you and I, that there's a higher possibility of land being developed in the future than there ever was in the past. So, you know, we've been in a situation before where we thought, well, we won't vote on it at this town meeting, we'll
Right.
back away and come back for it another time, and lost the opportunity. So I think in this case, it's such a strategic piece, and the fact that we can use CPA money to protect it, the open space portion is really a high priority.
So this is where my notes get sketchy. So the house, did you mention potentially selling the house for, or buying the house for 400,000, but only selling it at 260 for affordable? Or did I
Well, we
totally
talked-
miss something as I was taking notes?
An affordable unit has to be sold for 265 or somewhere in that range. So what we're talking about is never acquiring it by the town,
Okay,
but putting money into the hands of the current owners to the point where they can lower the sale price enough so they could sell it to a third party who could then invest in it, fix it up, refurbish, and then come away with a reasonable profit. For most, I guess, affordable projects, 20% is considered reasonable. So,
okay.
and I've
then-
looked at that and I've said, how much money do you spend? What's a reasonable amount of sum of money to spend to create an affordable unit? If we look at the houses on Highland Ridge, the differential between the market rate houses and the affordable units is far more than, what we're talking about here. When I talked to Habitat and I would talk to Stephanie from the Assabet Housing Collaborative, I say, we could take that money and how many rental units could we support? How many people could we support that are in rental units with some of that money? And they say the difference is that when you have an opportunity to put a family in a home and allow them over time to gain equity as they come to complete ownership of that property, the dynamic just changes dramatically for that whole family. That suddenly you end up with children that are in a community, it's stable environment, they're involved in the public schools. I mean, it just goes on. And the ripple effect to society in general is just magnified significantly by that investment. And so you bite the bullet, you spend the money, and then in the long run, society gains significantly. And I said, okay, now I'm beginning to understand what it is we're talking about and why that differential seems dramatic, but is really defendable, I guess. So
the money's really to buy the land, going that way, or whatever way you're sitting in town. And then to give a little bit to the homeowner so that they can sell it, so hopefully decrease it and sell it for affordable housing.
yeah, and I think it may very well be that more is dedicated to the protection of the house as an affordable unit than it is for the acquisition of the open space.
And then your last one about the housing coordinator, that's a think about, that's not going on this.
We don't have to spend it until 25, but the commission would really like a commitment on the part of the town to engage in this project starting now, and that we would continue for the 3 years. So Kristen and I have been talking about this a little bit, and the planning board's feeling supportive of it, as is the CPA. So at some point, we're going to see an engagement letter from Central Mass Regional Planning that I think these two committees will probably vote on, because the money will be coming out of their funds. And then we'll come to the select board and ask you for your support as well.
So first year's grant, that's paid by the grant.
Yep.
Second and third year come out of CPA money, and then the years
Some out of
after
housing
that
partnership.
comes out of housing. Okay.
Yep.
All right, and we might, if it's more on that topic, put that off for another, we had a 7:30, we have a 7:30 sort of joint meeting with other committees.
Yeah, I don't want the
but-
finance committee mad with me.
Right.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
But we're looking for sort of a vote to support those other CPA articles.
That
Is that
would
what we're
be
looking for?
great.
Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
Still on mute.
Motion to support the articles already mentioned by Tim. Does that work?
Yep. For the CPA articles that are gonna be on the town meeting.
Yeah.
I'm
I'll
okay
second
with
it.
Yep. I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone eye.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. And then we
Thanks,
can
kids.
decide the right time to come back to talk to the select board about that housing.
Yeah, when we
coordinator
get the
stuff,
letter
too.
from Central Mass, we'll make an appointment.
Okay, great.
Take care.
Thanks, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
And so next on our agenda is actually a joint meeting by 3 different boards: the Select Board, the Finance Committee for the Town of Berlin, and the Berlin Boylston Regional School District. And Kristen and other sort of parliamentary procedure experts might help me. Like they have to formally call their meetings to order. I don't think we're doing a lot of votes, so how we would do votes might be moot, but
Sure. So I did have Mary post for all 3, FinCom and Select Board, just in case there was a quorum. If there is not a quorum, they do not have to call their boards or committees to order. So
Okay.
I will start with Carol. Carol, who did you want us to bring forward from school committee?
Hi, good evening. I have Nancy Kuneski on, and then I have Mike Topman, I believe, is here, Megan Grill, Julie
Okay.
Lee.
Oh, the whole gang's here. All right.
And,
And I see FinCom has a quorum too. So if
I'm
we
not sure
could,
if Lori and Jessica are here. Megan, do you know if Lori and Jessica are here as well? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, and Janelle Fitzpatrick. That's our special
Laurie?
education.
Laurie and Jessica are not on.
Okay. And then
Tonight.
Janelle Fitzpatrick is our pupil personnel director. So that's special education. So she is here.
so Scott, you would just have each of them call their meetings to order.
Carlson, you start at the school board. I don't think I even know who the chair is, would call their meeting to order.
Hi, Mike Topman, Chair of the School Board, called this meeting of the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee to order.
Great. And Scott, you're chair of FinCom.
Call to order for the Berlin Finance Committee.
Great. With everyone here, I actually don't even know who's starting off. This is designed to sort of do a sort of more formal presentation of the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District's budget. And just to, save the school staff from having to repeat themselves at several different meetings, having them do it all at once in front of all of us. Also saves any miscommunications or even miscommunication between us as boards. So I don't know who's gonna kick that off. Carol,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Scott, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to ask if the school could just give a brief overview of where they're at with their budget. And then what I can do is give an overview of what's been discussed with the select board and the FinCom. And then we can answer questions that folks may have.
Kristen, I can just kick it off just to say, we've been to Berlin several times for both the regular budget and the capital plan. We've been working closely with Kristen and June to try to look at this as in a reasonable manner and to try to come together. So we have been working very hard to try to make this happen for both the schools and the town. Nancy's done a tremendous job of working these figures, and she's going to go over them again tonight, where we're at currently from the first time we came to the boards, and then we'll go from there with questions you might have. Kristen, do you have the presentation that Nancy? I don't know if you want to go with that, Nancy, or do you want to just talk? I think Kristen might have that.
I have a new one. I don't think I sent it to you, Kristen. Can
I don't-
share it, or do you want me to quickly send it to you? Whatever's easier.
I should be able to, you can share. Are you able to share? If not, Mary, can we make her able to share?
I think it's just easier to look at the figures on the screen.
Yeah.
More
Sure.
concrete.
Perfect.
Do you see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. That's not what I want you to see, but I wanted to make sure you saw what I was pulling up. No, not that either. Sorry.
Okay.
I've never done this before, so bear with me. I apologize. I don't know. Let me try one more thing. I want to go in through PowerPoint. I might have to send it to you because I don't know if
That's fine. If that works easier, no problem.
I'm sorry.
No problem at all.
Oh, I think I got it. Let's see if this works. That looks like that's it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I thought since we last met in December, and this will be voted on March 7th. This hasn't been officially voted on by our school committee yet. But this is in the direction that Carol and I have headed. And we met with the subcommittee today, and I think we're kind of all on the same page. So I think it's a safe bet to kind of move forward with this. So if we go, sorry. All right, we'll start with Berlin Elementary. So this is our current enrollment for the elementary school. It's, as you can, if you look down here where it says fiscal year 24, that's our projections for next year. As you can see, it's still early for kindergarten. It's saying we currently have 18 enrolled. We're thinking that's going to be a low number. Time will tell. We'll evaluate it as we get closer. So right now it's actually showing enrollment being down by 10, but I do think, you know, if it forecasts out the way we think it will come in higher. Then how do I, and then you can see that we have 2 teachers for every class in our, and this shows you our average class sizes. Most of our classes are pretty good with our class sizes. Our highest is at 21. And then if we move on, you can see the adjustments that we made. Since December, we went back and we cut $277,000 from the budget. We're currently at a 13% increase for the elementary school for $4,746,000. The main increases are in our out of district tuitions and our fixed charges, which is our benefits and insurance. Our health insurance came in at a 10.5% increase. So that was actually higher than we anticipated. And then our other services are our transportation and our special education costs are driving that too. And then I can show you what our above level service requests are and what our level service requests are. So our above level service requests of what we kept in the budget, for general education, kindergarten paraprofessional, various software for teaching and learning. We would like to bring a custodian back in-house. It's currently contracted out, portrait of a graduate program. And we want to purchase a storage unit. It's a very small dollar amount. And for special education, to kind of meet our needs, we need a 0.25 board certified behavioral analyst, a 0.50 preschool teacher for our afternoon program, a 0.50 preschool paraprofessional for our afternoon program, special education reserve fund, which will help us with our rising out of district costs, our Orton Gillingham training and applied behavioral analysis training for our paraprofessionals. So that covers the elementary school.
Could I ask a question about the fixed charges? So
Yes.
if two subcomponents both went up by 10%, how does it result in the entire line going up by 44%? That just math doesn't make sense.
That's
to me.
more than health insurance. That's property insurance.
Yeah, but if they all go up, so if every line item went up 10%, the total should go up by 10%. And so if your
So,
biggest line
well-
items are going up by 10%, why is everything going up 44%?
Because we currently have more employees enrolling in health insurance than we did last year than what was budgeted. So yes, it should be 10%, but more people elected the health insurance than we anticipated, according to what was budgeted last year, because it's budget to budget.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question on transportation. Are there still issues with bus drivers that are needed to fulfill the routes now?
So we currently have drivers for every route. The problem we run into is we do not have substitute drivers. So if a driver calls in, we have to double up runs. So it makes it difficult. But the good news is we now have a driver for every run. So it's improving very slowly.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. And one other thing that I wanted to touch upon is, and I should have touched upon this first, is I just think it's important for the committee to
understand our budget, we have many costs that are mandated increases. Our special education out of district tuitions, now this is for both schools combined, both towns combined, have a 71% projected increase for fiscal year 24. So this is 907,000 of increases in out of district tuitions only. Our entire special education budget has a $1.2 million increase. And that's a 7% of our overall 15% budget increase for fiscal year 24. I just really wanted to bring that to your attention because I just think it's important for the committee to understand that that's a huge part of the increase that we're asking for is our special education costs.
Just confirming this. So you're saying about 12% of the entire budget is just special education? Because your entire budget for all three of them is about $8 million. And so 1.2 million is special ed. That's about 12%.
Yep.
Is it out of all out of district that you're talking about, or is it?
So the out of district, no, it's the whole entire special education budget. So it includes services, everything. Just taking special ed on its own, that's the entire increase.
And are you breaking this out into a Berlin budget, a Boylston budget, and a Tohoto budget?
It is broken out that way. I can get you the figures for that if you'd like to see it.
No, I'm just, you have it.
This
as
is entirely, this
everything for everybody.
This 1.2 million is for all schools. This is all combined.
And has the finance committee told you what they're looking for? How it's been broken out in the past?
No. No.
It's been, the way we approved the regionalization, I believe, was that Berlin and Boylston are still broken out separately from Tohoto.
We do have that broken out later in the document here.
Okay.
It's just, this is a summary of the budget. Since we are one district, this is a summary. It does break it out.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying. Yeah, it's broken. I have it broken out by school, but I just wanted to point that overall, I wanted to just show you how high the increase was. So if we go back to here, this is the elementary school. I have it broken out right here for out of district tuitions. The increase for the elementary school, the out of district tuitions for next year is $148,898.
Nancy, excuse me, just I'm looking at the numbers we got on February 8th. The Finance Committee got on February 8th. And the totals are different. Do you?
Yes, we went, the totals for out of district tuitions?
No, right here, what we're looking at in this slide, Berlin Memorial budget comparison.
Yep, they went down. So we went in, since we met with you in December, and we tried to make some cuts. Our goal is to.
Sorry, I'm looking at the numbers you gave us on February 8th.
Yeah.
We talked when you came to, when we were in person, met in Berlin.
Yep, so, we even changed it since then.
Well, that's right. That's what I'm asking is, is what went into it? Because this is the level services numbers. They're different. I'm just curious.
Yes.
What what's been happening on the school district side to move those numbers? What do you, what's different for Berlin Memorial there?
So hold on. Where's that page? Hold on. We cut above level service items. Here it is. Okay, so we, this is for the elementary school. So we delayed to future years a 0.40 FTE health teacher, a 0.25 floating nurse, a 0.25 IT technician, a 0.2. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, you don't need to go through that. It was the level service only for fiscal 24. Those numbers are different in the chart you just had up versus what we were given on the 8th of February. So this isn't considering anything to do with above level service. This is just the level service numbers for fiscal 24. It's a very small question I'm asking if.
Yeah, I don't have the one I gave you with me. I wish I did. I mean, I know I've made adjustments. I know the insurance came in as things came in for real numbers. I adjusted them.
Okay.
I don't have it with me of what exactly the differences are.
Okay, thanks.
You're
Well,
welcome.
it's just, I do have those numbers here. I mean, because you gave us the budget when we first met in December was the same
Yep.
as what we had when we met in February. And the increase here previously was 12%. Now it's 13%. It's increasing from 481,012 to 564,181.
Yep.
So the level has actually gone up another 80, almost 80,000 from when we discussed back in February.
So definitely, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned your cuts. So what you mentioned,
Right.
you made some, dollar amount
What did
cuts,
we
but
add?
it looks like the cuts have only been made in the above level budget because.
Right.
That
is correct.
Okay, and there's and then there's been approximately an $80,000 increase in the level budget for BMS.
I know I changed the health insurance because I originally budgeted the health insurance at 10% and it went up to 10.5%.
Do you have what that extra 0.5% is on like health insurance? Do you have a whole number on that?
Yeah.
See, while you're looking, maybe Carol or Mike could chime in, but obviously healthcare costs are going up. They go up for everybody, large companies, small companies, municipalities, etc. Can you tell us what you're doing to go out and look for additional quotes? Or are you just keeping with the same healthcare insurance company and accepting what they give you?
So Nancy and I did talk about that as a possibility. We felt like at this point we're in motion with this particular budget. We can do that and start to look at that. We just wanted to present with what we know right now. Because I know that Nancy just found out, I think it was last week, that there was the increase to the 0.5 increase for sure. So that is a possibility. It would mean changing over quite a bit as far as the healthcare offerings for the staff, but we can certainly do that.
And the budget.
Did you want to say any more
is-
about that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The health insurance is 575,000 that for active employees. And then you have retired employees at 57,000. Yeah.
Was
that's
it
a
10.5%, Nancy? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
It
you.
went up 10.5%.
You're with Maya as well?
We're with Maya.
Yeah,
And
we
it-
got hit. I just had a meeting this afternoon. We got hit with 10.5% as well. We're actually very lucky. We're part of their pool because our mods were quite high. We would have been hit with a 27% increase. So, but they capped it at 10.5, which is why I assume we're both getting hit with that because your mods were maybe even higher than the 10.5.
Yeah, it came a lot higher. Yep.
Kristen, are you thinking of going out to look elsewhere yourself for the town at this point?
So we scheduled an IAC Insurance Advisory Committee meeting next week to discuss this. We're looking at, possible options for what we can do. I can tell you that GIC is not great. In my experience, you're better off to look at plan redesign if that's the direction you need to go in my opinion.
Then you have to negotiate that, correct?
Plan
Yeah.
redesign?
Right.
Yeah.
Not if you're making this, not splitting 75-25, but actually just like if you're talking about deductibles or copay changes. I don't know that those are specified. I'd have to look at the union contracts. They're usually not in my experience. It's usually more the split. We wouldn't look at changing that.
And then the numbers you've been presenting, Nancy, on expenses, just the expense side, the revenue side and state money goes against it because you said the fiscal year approved budget for 23 is 4.8 million, a little short of that. But the assessment to taxpayers is only 3.6 million. And so how much of this sort of increase is going to be, you have a different slide up, but how much of the increase is just absorbed by increased state aid and will not actually affect the taxpayers? Or is the reverse true even?
So I can show you the assessments. Do you want to look at Tohoto first and then go to the assessments? Or do you want me to just go right to the assessments?
Why don't you look at Tohoto first and I will ask, because that question will come up
Okay.
again on Tohoto. So go
Okay,
to Tohoto.
all right. So here's Tohoto. You can see our enrollment. We have an enrollment projection to increase by 55.
That's Berlin and Boylston.
That's correct. Yep.
Do you have the breakdown of percentage Berlin versus Boylston?
Yeah, I'll get that in a different slide.
Sure.
Yep. This is everything combined, Berlin and Boylston. It's currently, we adjusted it at a 12% increase at 1.2 million. And then what we left in the budget is listed down here. We left our mathematic program for 6 through 8, update some textbooks and psychology and physics lab equipment, computer numerical control for our tech class, power school upgrade, various software, portrait of a graduate, additional late bus on Wednesdays. We delayed a lot to future years. We cut out the assistant principal, making the athletic director full-time. We cut our math teacher for our financial literacy, LabQuest for chem, physics, AP biology, and all of the positions I mentioned earlier, the split out of the floating nurse, the IT tech, occupational therapist, miscellaneous curriculum, and the laptop cart for science. So those were all of what was presented to you in the last presentation we took out. Main increases of our budget driver, we have 3 new out-of-district tuitions, obviously our fixed charges, bringing a custodian back in-house. Let's see, capital. We made changes to our capital requests. I have it split out by school. You can see here for the elementary school, we have the flat roof, the miscellaneous IT support, which is devices, laptops, Chromebooks. We put our copiers into the capital portion. We need 2 new copiers. We have 2 boys' rooms where the toilets need replacing. So that's the plumbing repair. We have 4 exterior doors that are rotted and need replacing. And then the truck for facilities. Our facilities guy goes from all 3 of our buildings traveling using his personal vehicle, constantly travels from building to building. And it makes much more sense for him to have a vehicle that's under our coverage for him to use. So we put that into the capital plan. And then under Tohoto, same thing with the IT support. Our security camera needs, our security system needs upgrading. Facility assessment on the building. We need 3 new copiers. We took the 3D printers and put them into the capital plan. HVAC upgrade, the truck for facilities, and our bonded principal and interest that is standard.
So what's the percentage increase for each of the schools?
For capital?
No, I guess I'm talking operating budget, sorry.
For each of the 3 schools. So for your elementary school, 13%.
Okay.
Boylston Elementary School, 20%. And Tohoto, 12%.
I'm kind of in shock, actually. I
And
have,
again, these are,
I have
sorry.
never seen such high percentage increases. And I was on the school committee for 15 years.
Yeah. Well, that's why
and
when I
again, but
started
this is the
this,
expense side. So what does it look like when you take out
Yeah.
the increase in state aid? Because
So
maybe
let's go-
after we do
let's go
state
to
aid,
our
these are not
revenues.
nearly as bad.
Well, if we
Mhm.
could, Nancy, before you do that, I've got a couple questions. On slide
Absolutely.
16, you had talked about increase in utility rate. I know that Berlin, and I don't know if Boylston can do it, but Berlin was fortunate enough through our energy committee to lock in and kind of like save everyone's rate so that we weren't experiencing the high rates that National Grid is pushing through. Is there not an opportunity for
We
any of the
did
school
lock in.
districts to do that?
So
You
in the
did lock in?
in the elementary school, yes, we did. We did
Which elementary school? Berlin,
for Berlin. Yep.
but not for Tohoto or Boylston?
I think they probably have done it for all of them, Peg,
Yeah.
over the years.
It's still an increase compared to where we are at this point in time. I can look up the increases if you want me to. It's
No,
not
no,
as
no, no,
high
that's
as-
fine. I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah,
curious.
we
'cause
are, we
I-
are locked into a different, like a side provider than,
Okay.
than National Grid.
Right.
Yes.
And then I think on slide 17, if you could scoot to that one, please. Next one. That one. So the truck for the facilities, so you've got 32. We all know how good Peg is in math, so that's what, 65, and then 65 over there, so that's 13,000. Is that not the cost of what Berlin Police offered to sell their excess
Yeah,
vehicle?
that's their vehicle. That's the police vehicle.
But they
No.
offered to sell it to the school, so is that what the school is purchasing? Or are these, is this for a truck across all three schools?
He only needs
A
one
truck.
truck, right?
We need, it's one, that is the truck that we would like to use in all three schools.
All right,
So
so
we-
that's the truck that you're buying.
Yes,
That is correct. Hope, yes,
hope to buy.
yes, hope to buy.
Hopefully. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a question here on the six round capital requests. I see the IT support has jumped significantly from what was presented to us before. You had originally for this present fiscal year for BMS 45,000. I see now it's gone to 120,000. Do you have a kind of breakdown of what has changed on that one to bump it up so high?
Yeah, so in BES, we were just recently told that, and Carol, you might be able to speak better on this than me, but the switches in our routing equipment needs to be replaced. So that alone is between 60 and 85,000. So that's part of that. And the rest of that is Chromebooks for the students.
Okay, so you had the switches and access points for fiscal year 26. So you moved them forward to fiscal year 24.
Yeah,
We
it
did.
came to our attention how bad the systems are, and we can't wait.
And then Nancy, what's your level of materiality? Like in my office, Chromebooks are an expense, not a capital item, because Chromebooks are usually like only a few $100s each.
Yeah, I've always put them in capital. It's as long as you go on a replacement plan of 4 to 5 years. That's just how I've always seen it done. I mean, I know some towns are different, so that's
Yeah.
why I went this
Right.
route.
So I was
Um,
referring to actually my office as opposed to the town of Berlin, and that sort of, I happen to be in charge of our IT budgets. And so because
Yeah.
Chromebooks are so cheap, like expensive laptops
Right.
sometimes, or when computers were $3,000 and $4,000, they were considered a capital thing. But my office, the materiality is $5,000. And so there's no computers like that. And those are all expensed. But Chromebooks,
Right.
I mean, I'm getting Chromebooks for like $400. And so the
Right.
idea that a $400 expenses in the capital seems odd. It's splitting hairs because if it's not in this line item, it's your expense line item that we already said is
Right.
high. So
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess I was looking at it as a lump sum and not individual. you know. I mean, if we have to put them back into the
Yeah.
operating, you know, we will.
I would also add to that. I mean, historically, we did have the devices as part of the capital plans, and at least in Berlin, that I recall when I was as principal. But we didn't have it broken down. We had like a lump sum that was given up to us, whether it was $5,000 or $10,000. Here's what you can use this year for device replacement costs. I think what we're running into now are the more significant costs, which is like the $9,000 per switch that we need and routing equipment. So we need at least 3 of those for each of the schools right now. So we probably need three times what, $27,000 just in that alone. So that and the devices, that's what we're looking at. I mean, yeah.
And then Scott and Kristen, I believe it is going to be that when the town votes on our budget, the Berlin Memorial Capital Assessment and Townsville Capital Assessment are a flat dollar amount within which the schools can spend it as they see fit. So that if we only approved, let's say, $400,000 for Berlin Memorial at town meeting, the school could then decide which one of these is more important and less important, that we at town are not sort of micromanaging that level of detail.
It is broken out within our budget as their general assessment and a capital assessment, both for Berlin Memorial and Tohoto. I guess one question I would ask is, you know, in going through the budget presentation that you had given us in February, I had noticed that some of the items that were in the assessment appeared to be capital items. So I had mentioned that, you know, if you were able to pull some of the capital items and put them in capital where they kind of belong, that should lower the overall assessment, but it doesn't seem like that actually happened. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, what went on there.
I would just say, I think that the major increase now is the routing equipment and the switches that we just found out are tanking right now. And if we don't, that's the whole connectivity piece to all of our computers.
think
So
what happened
probably
is,
more than the devices, that's probably what we would need to spend on.
Nancy and Carol, I want to pick up from what Scott Hawkins mentioned, is that when we deal with the town finances, a purchase that's $10,000 ends up in capital. And also you think about, is it a recurring sort of item, right? So if you're buying your 90 Chromebooks under a single contract, then you could look at it and say, okay, that's well over $10,000. But to Scott, if you're buying them one at a time, they're 400, right? So it's a little bit of how you want to position it. And there may be some benefits, depending on the particular financial circumstances in the town, there may be benefits to having some of your expense in a capital category versus, the assessed operating expenses. But you need to make sure they're in the right categories. And I think what Kristen said is really important, that whatever items she identified that might be capital, you really want to get them out of your operating assessed budget and get them over into your capital budget. I think that's important. I think it will help you.
Well, and it looks like you've done that here because the capital amounts have gone up. I had initially for BMS, I had, what was that number? For capital, 337,838, and that's gone up to 468,410. So I guess in my mind, I was expecting the assessment would go down accordingly.
and then unfortunately you get the health insurance that goes up. So
okay,
it washed it out.
Yeah, Kristen, for example, what we talked about on that was, the capital plan, because what they presented us was their 3-year plan. And for example, the switches were on fiscal year 26. All they did was get moved to fiscal year 24, jumping it up right alone there by over $63,000.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's really been a shifting around of the, I don't see additions here. Well, I don't see what the other 2 years are on their list here, but it looks like it's mostly, there's plumbing repair, I think, is new. and replace 4 exterior doors. They seem
Yeah.
to have replaced the repave walkway and playground. And I'm assuming that got either pushed back into another fiscal year or determined it doesn't need to be done in any time soon.
It's been pushed to the next fiscal year because when we found out
25.
about the switches in the routing equipment, you know, we that took priority. So to make it all work, try to work, we pushed that to the next year. So the plumbing repair and the 4 exterior doors were in the general budget. We took it out of the general budget and put it into the capital, along with the copiers. So those are changes since
Right.
last time we met.
And they added the truck too, Nancy.
Yes, yep.
So do these numbers reflect any changes in the information that came out about Massachusetts DLS and how there would be additional funding, or proposed funding to Berlin and Assabet, et cetera? Does that reflect any of the new information that went out, or is this still previous information before the additional funding came out?
Peg, let me just interject and tell you that Berlin FinCom has not seen any revenue numbers from the school district. All we've seen are proposed spending. So we haven't seen any revenue yet.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
what Peg,
Peg.
yeah, Nancy, what Peg is referring to is preliminary numbers came out from the Division of Local Services last week, and I circulated them
Yep.
within the town, and they're actually pretty encouraging, but they should impact on the revenue side here. We really need to see the revenue side to understand where we are.
So
And sorry, and whoever's driving the PowerPoint, could you get rid of could you make it full, projecting thing, screen? Get rid of the sidebar because the numbers aren't very visible.
If you look down below, there's like a little screen, goes into presentation mode all the way down. Yep, keep going over. Couple more. Nope, keep going. One more. There you go.
oh, look at that. Okay, thank you. My first time
welcome.
Thank you.
sharing this, so thank you very much. That's much better.
Big help.
Yeah. So this is our revenues. This is the first page of the revenues. We did get the chapter 70 in last week. We are getting an increase of approximately 360,000. So that shows you what we received in 23 versus 24. So we did get a 13% increase in chapter 70. That's in our state aid. And when you look at our district revenue, it's all a gamble at this point. Right now, we're keeping it at the same 188,000. Our grants and revenues, which we'll go through on the next page, are going down by about 169,000. And you can see the assessments for both schools. on
And
the
that
bottom.
20% increase includes the increase in capital as well, correct?
This is combined, yes.
Right, because the increase in capital is pretty substantial, and so that's why we saw the
Yeah.
12,000
I have it-
earlier, and now this is 20, is because like Berlin Memorial was 60,000 last year, you're asking for 400,000.
Yes, I have it broken out separately by operating and revenue on the next
Yep.
page.
And just to confirm, the state aid there is that's covering all, the 362,000 is a total over all 3 schools.
That is
Correct.
correct. Yeah. So this is our school choice revolving. So this is broken out for all 3 schools. So for your town, this is your school choice revolving right here. I allocated 176,000 to the budget, which leaves us with 481,000 forecasted for the end of fiscal year 24. And then I kept it the same, using the same amounts for the next 2 years. And then for Tohoto, I increased the allocation for Tohoto by quite a bit. I increased it to $700,563. I mean, last year we were at 586,000, and if you look at the year before, it was 293. So we're slowly creeping up If we continue at that rate, you know, we're not gonna have much in a couple of years. It goes down very quickly.
Yep.
It's
it
all a
does.
balancing act. And I hate to use up too much of school choice because, you know, it's nice to use for emergency funds when needed. So it is all a balancing act and how you're gonna use it. But that's how it's worked into the budget for 24. These are our grants and revolvings. You can see it's broken out by each school. We got our entitlement grants, which are 240 grant, 262, Title 2A, Title 1. Right now, our entitlement grants, they're broken out the same as they are this year. The amounts haven't come out, so I just put them in at the same. Circuit breaker, that's to help with your special education tuitions. So it's broken out by 25, 25 to 225. I have it on a different screen where you can see the balance of it. Preschool revolving, we just added a half a preschool teacher to make it a full-time position at the elementary school. So taking additional funds from our preschool revolving account to fund for that. So we now have one of the salaries coming from BMS and one coming from Tohoto. I increased our allocation from after school revolving to 15,000, taken 5 from BMS and 10 from BES because the aftercare program's bigger in BES, and that's being applied towards electricity. And this is the circuit breaker account. So in this current year, we're using 319,000 towards special education tuitions, leaving us with 194,000. We're projected to have about 300,000 next year, and using 275,000. I tried to leave. I've always tried to leave it like at least 200,000 in this account. So if you get hit with the out of district tuition during the year, you're able to fund it. So this is our the operating assessment broken out by operating only. You can see for you guys, this is your elementary school and this is Tohoto. I put in here what was the assessment for 22, 23, and now you have 24. So the increase for the elementary school is 16%. Tohoto was 12, and together it's 22%. Yeah.
I'll figure out what is wrong, what makes me concerned. So if half of it goes up 16% and half of it goes up 12%, I don't know how you get to a total of a 22% increase. Because math, my brain tells me that the total should go up probably halfway between those two numbers. Like if one number increases 4% and one increase is 5%, and when you add them together, the increase shouldn't be 7%. I just can't quickly find a math error in the actual numbers.
Play with it for a second.
You're right, Scott. Something's doubled up here. Something's not right.
Something.
I mean, it doesn't change the fact they're asking for a $910,000 increase in operating and another, $400,000 or $500,000 in capital. I mean, I did some quick math. So to pay for $1.6 million in increases for the schools, that's just school increases. We could cover in a town if we zeroed out. This is not increases, zeroed. If we got rid of the entire highway department, all of human services, all of cultural services, cemetery commission, all the transfer station, that's about $1.5 million. This is not cutting their increase. This is zeroing out those departments and making them go away. And so this is where I get sort of, how do we pay for this? Because there isn't other places in our budget to increase 1.6 million.
So Scott, if I could,
It's 14%.
Okay, good.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Yep.
So Scott, if this is helpful at all to everybody, I can just share that I plugged those numbers into our budget, just to see the 4159852 for Berlin Memorial and the 3291826 for Tohoto. And that runs us a deficit of $488,446 at this time.
Right, and that's before doing another $500,000 for capital.
Which would, yeah, that would come out of free cash, but yes, that's just taking into account.
Yes, but
the
capital doesn't come out of
assessment.
free cash. We have a line item in the budget for capital that was $60,000 last year for Berlin Memorial, and they're asking for 435.
Yep,
So just
exactly.
Berlin Memorial is 400,000. Tohoto, they had $2 million, and for 1/3 of that, that's about $600,000. If I'm doing quick math, I could be wrong there. And they only had 400,000, so that's another $200,000.
Yeah.
Again, to pay for it, we'd have to wipe out almost every other department in the budget.
Right.
Is there a possibility that we could get an updated copy of this presentation, given some of the math errors that have occurred, or maybe some of the questions that Kristen had asked, but it's just kind of hard to follow with, well, it's really not 22%, it's 14%. I mean, if we're going to vote, we're going to continue to discuss, I'd really kind of like to look at, and where comments from finance have said, oh, but the presentation that we have has different numbers. Can you tell us what's changed? So I'd like all three groups to really be on the same page. And plus, for any parents that are in the audience or watching this on playback or talking to each other, that we're all talking same numbers.
Can I ask a question, Scott?
Go ahead.
I'd like to know, when is the school meeting again with the finance committee? Scott Schultz, can you tell us that?
We don't have a specific date set right now. So right now, I'm talking to the Boylston Finance Committee. We're going to meet with them. We're planning to meet with them on this coming Monday. And then attend the budget hearing from the school committee, which will be the next day on March 7th.
March 7th.
So we don't,
okay.
Yes. So we don't have a specific date put on it of a finance committee meeting, but we at a minimum plan to attend for that.
Okay, so March 6th
Is
with
yes, with Boylston.
with
Yeah, we'll be
Boylston.
meet. Yeah, our right preliminary thing right now is to meet at 7:30 with the Boylston Finance Committee. They normally start at 6 o'clock. We'll be on there to meet at 7:30 on March 6th.
And that is where?
It's going to be a hybrid. They have one member in Florida, so they will be doing virtual, but most of the members actually meet in person. So I'm anticipating it'll be at the Boylston Townhouse, I guess they call it.
Okay. Well, I was just going to suggest that at the next meeting, where perhaps I noticed you aren't having any link, a Zoom link on your agenda any longer. And I was wondering whether you could do that so that perhaps we could log in and listen to the meeting the next time you do have a discussion on the schools and their budget.
We could look at that. I think the issue is the setup for a hybrid type of meeting. It's either doing all Zoom. We prefer to do face-to-face, but I think if we do that, we pretty much have to go all Zoom. Our technology isn't really set for a hybrid.
Okay. The other thing is, though, I think it would have been nice if we could have all had the same information in front of us. Perhaps we could have, like Peg said, have the information updated and sent back to us, to each other. But it might even be better if we went to, or went to a finance committee meeting to discuss this. It's just not, I just don't know if it's working with 20 people all on this.
So I'm not used to releasing all this information before the school committee actually voted on what the budget is. I think that's part of the problem, is that the numbers keep changing because nothing's been final yet.
So
They vote,
Nancy, yeah.
According to our bylaws, their information should have been to us earlier.
We've been working, Nancy, for a couple of years to have an understanding with Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he came along, he was helpful with it. Have an understanding with him to try to get us the preliminary numbers in December, which is why you all came to us in December. And then
Right.
normally what we would see is when we sat down again in January, February, or early March, the numbers would have changed based on the feedback we gave in December, which is why we try to meet early, because it's a very important part of our budget. And,
Right.
and so that process didn't work this year for whatever reason. We have a lot of new people, and that's all right. There's an awful lot I don't understand in this finance area. I keep learning, but that process is really important to get in early and to be able to answer these questions so that you can get to final numbers when you get close to a budget that the school committee is going to vote on. So we really do need to do it earlier. And this is, when we deal with the Assabet school budget, we have the revenue numbers, the revenue projections, and the expense projection. We see them both at the same time. And that enables us to truly understand what the financial picture is. And we haven't had that picture. We need it. Okay.
So-
and I'm not being critical. You're new to this process with us. And it's just what we need to do to kind of get to a good place for everybody. And I found it very helpful last week to look at the estimated Massachusetts numbers. If we go back to, could we go back to the revenue slide here? Because again, this is the first time, actually the circuit breaker. Beginning balance, okay. Yeah, and I guess I'm not understanding the revenue numbers.
The revenue circuit breaker, they use it a year, what is it, in arrears?
Okay, so I'm looking at the memo that came out on the Massachusetts memo that came out that I got last Wednesday from DLS and circulated. And what is it called? It's called Local Aid. And they're saying this budget proposes full funding for charter schools. It also fully funds special education circuit breaker at $503 million. Like 63 million, 14% increase over fiscal 23. This funding level reflects full phase in of out-of-district transportation cost reimbursement provided for in the SOA, whatever that is. This proposal quadruples the amount of funding available for extraordinary relief or payments that defray certain district costs in the year they are incurred, unlike most of this program, which reimburses districts a year in arrears. So there's some special ed money proposed in this budget. Now, I know it's not a final state budget, but when we do our revenue projections, we really ought to be taking this memo seriously and bringing it into these numbers, I think.
This revenue is based off of a 75% reimbursement from circuit breaker.
I realize.
So I know they put a 90% reimbursement in that, but I'll be honest with you, I've seen it saying that it's going to go up, up, and up for the last 5 years, and I've never seen it go above 75%.
Yeah,
I kept it at 75%. I'm not comfortable going higher than that. So
jump in and
that's
say
where I
something
got my.
from the school committee's perspective here? If we were, I heard of what you're mentioning there, Mary. If that were to come true and come in, we obviously in the committee would vote to change the numbers based on that. But I think what Nancy's trying to put forth is a very realistic, as it stands today, set of numbers. As far as getting these numbers to you all earlier, we are working on them almost every day and going through here. I know we even delayed a little bit so that we would have more time to work with all towns to get this sorted out. So I understand your frustrations a little bit, but it is a work in progress. We are trying to work with everyone to figure out what we can possibly do. This out-of-district placement issue is the special education issue, is the major driver of this huge numbers, and they are huge. I agree. It's a shock to everyone. But at the same time, it's required to spend on our schools. So we are going with it, where the school committee will be looking at it Tuesday, possibly taking a vote on it. And we should have more firm numbers by then. But I think what Nancy's trying to do is put forth a very realistic view of what we're dealing with in the schools. I know Jeff, for the last several years, would try to cut as much as possible, cut here, cut there. We're seeing the result of that now, where we have growing populations, growing student populations with special needs that translates to increased budget. So
Right, but Michael, what I'm worried about here is that from my standpoint of being on FinCom for 9 years and Select Board now for 3 more, is that we have had for 15 years an unsustainable increase in the school budget. And that I feel that we were very clear last couple of years that we can't continue to sustain 5% and 7% increases. And it feels almost insulting to say, well, you're right, you can't sustain 5%. How about 20%?
well, I
You know,
understand that, Scott, but
I can't
inflation
get
being
here and
what it
say
is and
taxpayers
the way it's
because we've
going up,
only been
it's
giving
just-
schools twice the rate of inflation for the last 10 years. You know, we now have to cut out everything we do in culture and town roads and everything like that, so we can afford these schools. I'm trying to figure out, how do we move forward in a budget that you don't feel we're nickeling and diming you to death, but we feel that you are asking for the moon and back every year?
Maybe
Yeah,
the
that
year
is the question. I agree. And
maybe the
I
year that
think
you
what we
buy
do is we
this,
do have a very realistic budget here. It is that out of district placement, I'm not sure, maybe Carol can probably explain it a little better. 71% increase. We can't say no to that. I mean, we can't say no to that student. You can't go. I'm sorry. You can't, we can't do that.
no, but you can say no to the truck that's going to cost you $13,000.
We could say no to the truck. I'm happy to do
Well,
that.
you know,
With the
maybe
thing with the
that's-
truck
maybe
is
take
the
a
truck comes
closer
from the
look.
town. We're buying that from the town. So the money would really be coming back to the
Right.
town through the purchase.
And
So that's
No,
not really a big deal. Also, it gets an employee from using a personal vehicle for business use.
Right,
It would
because
help us
the
there.
reimbursement of musical
You
is
can't
probably
be
equal.
buying that from us, though. You can't be buying the truck from Berlin. It didn't cost that much.
It's
No,
my
that,
understanding that is the truck.
that's
I
the
think
assessed-
someone mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, let's
that's
see a
that.
So,
Go ahead, Chris.
Michael, you know what? I want every child in this country to get an education, a public education. I am firmly behind this.
Yes.
And
we
I'm
agree.
sorry, what we're looking at here is not realistic. And it's way out of line with anything I've seen. And I've not been around as long as Scott Hawkins
Mhm.
has or some of the others. It is really not realistic at all. And what I want to see is to the 3 bodies that are here together with the Boylston, our counterparts in Boylston, I want to see us negotiate something that is realistic. And I think it's time to actually maybe question your assumptions about what this is here. And I've been thinking and searching and talking to people about this, and I was very grateful to see the preliminary Massachusetts budget numbers, because I think the revenue projections ought to count on a lot more money coming from Massachusetts. The transportation reimbursement is way up. And there is, I didn't get a chance to get to it, but there's a $10 million reserve. If we really have a financial emergency, there is Massachusetts money, and we have representatives in the State House. We can go to the governor, right? The governor is committed to education. So I think we need to look there and not cause this kind of shockwave through the Berlin budget, the operating budget, which is very small. It's not like, and we keep people's feet to the fire. And one of the reasons I think that Jeff put off things is we've all been through the COVID pandemic. And I can tell you, the employees in the town of Berlin have been stellar in being willing to put off their salary increases, do all kinds of things to come together and work as a team.
Yeah, I don't know. We saw that in the schools exactly through COVID. The teachers went above and beyond. I mean, they did an incredible job doing the remote school, the hybrid school, the everything else involved with that. We gave them every support we could possibly give. We had additional nurses come in. I agree with you. I think Nancy can probably speak to the revenue numbers better than I can. I'll tell you that. If she has firm numbers from the state, they'll be in this budget before we vote on it. I think that's the issue. We haven't voted on it yet, so it does constantly change.
So Michael, we're not going to have firm numbers. I think you have to go with the projections, and we know what the projections are now. And number one, and number two, the school choice monies, which I don't fully understand because I'm new to the details of this budget. If we're holding them for an emergency, is this not an emergency? Come on.
I don't know if we would consider funding the schools and improving the district as an emergency, but we could take another look at that. Sure.
No,
but if special ed is going up by $1.2 million, and we're going to get reimbursed next year for that, that's a great use of revolving fund. And I'm sorry, Peg does have her hand up. We should let Peg say something.
Oh, and Scott, thanks. Let me put my hand down. So I'm gonna ask like the giant elephant in the room question is, and Scott, you had alluded to it multiple times. Beyond presenting this budget, whether it's us or whether it's finance, we have got to clearly explain to the residents of this town how this budget is going to impact taxes. We have 33% of our population in Berlin who is elderly. They can't afford tax increases, not to say that other people in town can. But I'm saying we need a very clear picture to say, if this is the increase, then this is cut, this is cut, this is cut. And oh, by the way, the slush fund or whatever money that you want to call it, the levy, we're going to kill that. But you know what? It's not going to be available for the next New Year's. Or, hey, we've cut wink and blink and a nod. And oh, by the way, your taxes are still going to go up 5, 6, insert number here. We owe that as the select board and as finance to tell our residents in the town exactly as much as we can. And Kristen and June, I know that you're going to say, you can't say you get a $50 increase, you get an $80 increase, but to say you can expect and I'm making it up, a 10 to 20% increase in your taxes before this is even voted upon. We need a presentation that is clear. We need a presentation that has true figures in it, and that needs to be part of this. So,
we were asked to come and present this, and we will have that next week at the meeting.
I would just like to say one more thing, and it really pains me to say this, that you would be pitting the schools and the parents against the other residents who may not have children in school. If you can't come to some kind of work something out where we can all get behind this.
So Chris, I agree. And I don't think we're trying to pit anyone against anyone.
No, we're
I think that's why we're here tonight on.
I'm not saying you.
I know.
I'm saying that's what will happen.
Well, that's why we're here tonight on Monday night
happen.
with 3 of the committees trying to discuss it and work it out. That's why we haven't taken a final vote on it yet, so that we can meet and work with these 3 groups to come to that agreement.
Well, I don't know how much we accomplished in particular in this meeting, because we didn't have information ahead of time. And I don't think everybody, having it be so large, I think isn't a good idea.
Well, certainly. I think we have made progress tonight. At least we know what you don't like. That's progress.
Now, let me also add, Michael, that I'd like you to understand what we do like. We like a negotiated and a reasonable approach to this. This is a very important issue for the town.
Yeah.
It's not something, and it requires many voices coming together in cooperation. So all my comments, nothing here is critical of Nancy. This is her first time out here, or anybody else in the school district working on this or in the school committee. You're all putting your time in and putting your effort in. And I recognize that, just as I do. I sit in budget meetings weekly this time of year with the FinCom. And I'm happy to do it because it's a civic duty. But, we have to come to some middle ground. And these percentage increases are not a middle ground. They have to come down. And the revenue numbers, somebody's got to take a close look at these revenue numbers, because it's the first time I've seen them and I haven't had a chance to study or think about it, but I think we can do better on the revenue side in terms of budget projections. These are not done deals, they're budget projections.
So can we move on, Scott?
Yeah.
Scott, can I just ask you, what did you have in mind for, what were you looking at as a percentage increase? I know you had.
We wrote a
mentioned-
letter, did we not?
Yeah.
Wrote a letter.
Yeah, I think at the time I thought, I don't have the letter in front of me, but I thought it was that 5 or 7% looked fine, and I think we're talking across it because it's the capital. There's as much in the capital increase as there is in the operating increase.
Kristen, can you tell us what the letter said?
Yeah, if you want to pull that up.
I can pull the letter up.
I think we're getting.
Yeah, I thought we talked about trying to keep it as close to a 2.5% as the other departments were. that it talked about there had been a 4.2% for Berlin Middle and a 6.4% for Tohoto from 21 to 22. And then from 22 to 23, it was a 4.5 and a 5.4. So if I could just share two answers to your questions really quickly. The first is because we did get hit with that health insurance increase today as well, and our new growth numbers are stagnating. Basically, the percentages that we can support in our current budget to be balanced would be 6% for BMS and 5% for Tohoto. Anything over that, if you're talking about increases to residents, we did run some numbers on that. On the average single family home assessed at $450,000, every $100,000 that you add is about $50 on the tax bill. And that's approximately give or take, because it is a split tax rate. There are variables that go into that. So I just want to put that out there.
And then Kristen, I think more than my request, but we are researching sort of what would give the maximum flexibility on the floor of town meeting.
Yep.
I want to make sure that we don't accidentally hand tie the schools, so that even if the people on the floor want a large increase, that's not possible. And so it is trying to understand. My understanding doesn't necessarily agree with what Kristen knows, which I think we want to just make sure we do it right, because I'd hate to not set it up so that even at the end of the day, if we all agree on a 20% increase, that's not possible. And so we're going to try to make sure we keep some of that in play. And then I think we're also researching what happens if at town meeting floor, which is happening on the same day in both towns, we come to different answers. And what that does for the schools and what that does for the various impacted towns. Just to make sure we understand how that might work if for some reason on the floor of town meeting, we don't end up with the same answer between the two towns.
Yep. So I did research that.
Oh, sorry, Kristen, Megan Grill from Boylston, part of the school committee. Just going back to what Scott said about the if the both towns have different outcomes at town meeting. That was something we talked about at the Boylston Select Board meeting, I think maybe a month or two ago, when we met with them. And we were told that the school committee would actually hold a large meeting for both towns, and it would go to a public vote at that point. We were advised by council, but I think that is a great question that needs to be brought up when you meet with the Boylston FinCom, I think, or the select board is meeting Monday, right? With the Boylston Select Board?
No, the two finance committees are meeting.
Just the FinCom, so the select board will not be present?
I don't think so.
So I have a little bit of clarification on that I got from KP Law today, which is our town council. And this is all spelled out as well in chapter 16B. And I have a document on it I can forward as well. Basically, if the budget is not approved, it goes back to the district. The district puts forth a new budget. Another town meeting is held in that community. If you vote yes, then we continue. If you vote no, then as you mentioned, Megan, it goes to what's called a regional or a district-wide town meeting. And that would be basically a majority of those present from Berlin and Boylston combined. It's not split out in any way. So just regardless of where folks come from, if it doesn't pass at that district-wide meeting, what you're running up against now is, and even if you go to a district-wide meeting, you're running up against a July 1st deadline. So if a budget is not voted on by both communities and agreed upon by July 1st, the risk is the state will assess a 1/12 budget, which is working off of FY23 numbers. So that's ultimately what we're really trying to avoid here, because that doesn't work well for anybody. So, I would really like to get to a point where we can kind of come to meet in the middle. I understand there are fixed costs that are challenging. It's tough, but, we'll keep working on it.
If I could just say something, Kristen, as well, is thank you, Chris, thank you, Scott, thank you, everybody, Mary. I know you said you didn't feel like there was any progress here tonight. I think there was a lot of progress here tonight. If anything, it's the first time the entire group is talking face to face with this current group as it sits. So thank you for that. We didn't intend to insult or upset anyone with this budget. We understand that a full third of the town are elderly residents, fixed income residents, don't have kids in the schools. We understand that. We've worked for the past year putting together this district improvement plan. This is the first committee that's actually the regional committee. We just had the election. It's the first time we're doing this as the actual committee that everyone intended to have a few years ago. Putting together this improvement plan, this budget that goes along with that, we're trying to improve the schools for the students. That's additional teachers. This year, the difference between the level service budget, the above level service ask, the capital numbers, they're huge. We get it. We understand. We don't want to get to a point where we are having to cut teachers or cut other staff from the schools. We're close to that situation. We're trying to avoid that. That would be terrible for everyone. It'd be terrible for the district, terrible for the homeowners, terrible for just everyone, the town in general is having to cut that. So we're trying to avoid that. And I think we have a good plan. It's what we need in 2023 and beyond to prepare students for 13 years of education in our system to graduate, become part of the workforce, join society at large, and do what they need to do into the future. So we've cut quite a bit since December. We cut quite a bit since the last time, or it's changed quite a bit since the last time you met a few weeks ago. So we are working on it. It's continually in process. We will take a look at those numbers as you suggested again, and we'll have something else come up next week.
Yeah, and
I do want to thank you for having us here.
yeah, so where the frustration comes from, I think you say you've cut, and I believe you might have, but the net result is the operating budget is higher than it was when you last presented it. The capital budget is higher than it was when you last presented it. And so you presented it, you, not personally, sorry. We were presented by the schools a budget for capital and operating that we thought was unsustainable. And you saved out a bunch of cuts, and the net result is you're asking for more money than you were even asking at the last unsustainable. And so I'd just, it'd be nice if we can find a way to get the numbers to actually go down at the end of the day. I mean,
as a taxpayer in Berlin, I would love to have that as well. You know, I agree. I'm a taxpayer as well here, so I agree.
So it's you, Mike, and Julie, and the other
Correct.
Berlin member is,
He resigned a few weeks ago.
I noticed that on the
Mhm.
the budget presentation, there was only 5 members. What is
Yes.
your intention of getting an additional Berlin member?
The rules say we need to appoint someone, so we've asked anyone who's interested to let us know, raise their hand, and at our next meeting, as soon as someone has let us know, we'll interview them and appoint someone.
Okay. Pronto.
Yeah, that's the process for the last 2 years, I believe, since 2020. Early 2020, I believe. Several people retired, left, resigned through one way or another.
It's
So
to your,
all
it's
6
to
of
your
us have been appointed.
advantage. It's
What's
to your,
that?
it's to your advantage to have 3 members. So I hope that will
Yeah,
happen.
no, I
quickly.
agree. And if people are watching and they want to step up and put their name in the ring, just contact us. We mentioned at our last meeting is when it was announced that he resigned. So we announced then as well. Anyone who's interested, Town of Berlin, registered voter, let us know. It went out social media, it went out in the newspaper, it went out online, it went out at our last meeting.
Okay,
So
thank
anyone
you.
interested, come on out. We'd love to have you.
great. Well, I thank everyone for their patience and honest sort of and frank discussions there. It allows us to move forward. We look forward to the work you still have ahead. I know the timelines are tight because the warrant and all the budgets and final numbers have to start getting printed in 3 weeks. So hopefully we can get things done in a pretty orderly manner, because obviously the school numbers impact the other numbers on it. Okay, we'll see you folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all
Thank
your
you.
hard work. I know
Yep.
it's not easy.
I think on our select board agenda, actually, I think that the school board and FinCom have to actually close their meeting, don't they?
Yes.
Everyone disappears.
Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
For from either FinCom or school board.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I think we might have lost Mike, though.
That's okay. Megan can just second. I'll second that motion. I think Mike left.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye, Julie.
And then Scott,
Yes, we have a motion to adjourn.
Do you need a motion, Scott? A motion to
Yes.
adjourn? The finance committee adjourned the meeting?
And we need a second of Julie or Janet.
Shannon, I think, is having computer problems. She switched to phone.
Maybe you can second it, Scott. Is that
Can
permitted?
I second?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second it.
Thank you, everybody.
okay,
See you all
thanks.
later.
Bye.
Thanks both.
I think although we have several remaining items, I don't think any of them are super long. Kristen, do you want to start with your your town administrator report?
Sure, I will keep it quick. We did receive our state aid estimates from the governor, which show a whopping $4,671 in unrestricted general aid. We didn't think it would be much. That's actually over a 4% increase. It's just that our amount is so small. It's not a substantial dollar amount. In total, we got 32 articles requested to be placed on the town meeting warrant. I will be working on that, and I will have a draft for you next Monday. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any quotes for the hybrid meeting room upgrade, but we did get interest from several companies, one of which who wanted a site visit and some additional time to quote. So I'm going to be putting this back out shortly. Highway road materials bid, we actually, because of the weather tomorrow, extended the deadline of the bid opening to Friday. We have a significant amount of interest. Somewhere between 15 and 20 firms have taken out that bid. So I'm hopeful that we'll get a really good price for the road work. That also does include the paving at South Cemetery. And good news for recreation. The bid package for this project is out as well. There's a site visit on March 1st and bids are due March 9th at 1 o'clock in our office. This is for the reconstruction of the rec courts at 34 South Street, tennis, basketball, pickleball, an ADA compliant ramp, and installing fencing. The rest of it you can read. That's the meat of it.
Can I just ask if you could send us like an explanation of what you want people who are giving you quotes for the HD and hybrid meeting room upgrade? I don't know exactly what you're looking for. So if you could send an explanation or send the information that was given out to
Sure.
people who are interested. So I have some idea of what exactly we're doing with that room.
Yep, absolutely. Be happy to send that out for you.
And then Chris, if there is a way to do it without causing any conflict of interest, I have a couple of vendors I work with at work that do this type of work. And they might show interest because they know me, but I also, because they know me, I don't want it to be like, I got to figure out how we do it without a conflict of interest.
You have to declare that there's a process.
Yeah, right. Because like I don't choose any of the bidding, and so whether they put in a good bid or not is totally up to Kristen and not me. So
You just have to say those people and that you're not going to get any benefit from it pretty much.
I mean, the best thing to do is just to get them on the bid list, on the plan holder list for the next round. So the easiest way would be to have them call our office and just get on the plan list, and we will send them the plans.
Okay.
One more question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, I believe, in your report about the regional agreement with NVRDD.
Yes.
And I wondered if we could get a redlined copy of
Sure. And Chris, just for those watching, NVRDAB is
Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District. Sorry. Just easier to say that.
It is much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I want to say the one I've seen is not redlined, so let me request a redlined one, Chris.
Okay.
I kind of came in partway through on this one, so yeah, I need to get that.
Well, I know some of the changes only because I had to go to the meetings when we were talking about those different sections of the agreement. but
Yeah, and they just brought it up again, and they hadn't really brought it up since I was there. So you may actually be more informed on this one than me. I'm still trying to get up to speed. So
Yeah.
this is like a preview of coming attractions. So I'll get that for both of us.
either that or maybe just an old copy and a new copy.
Sure,
know.
absolutely.
And then Kristen, back to state aid. I just want to confirm again, the town of Berlin does not receive any lottery funds, correct?
That is correct. And that specific one I was speaking about is the unrestricted government state aid. That does not include libraries, veterans, exemptions.
We don't get any lottery aid?
It was cut off at some point when I was in FinCom because they think we're too wealthy of a community to need it.
Oh,
It's too bad.
okay.
We should run our own town lottery. No.
That was my questions and comments too.
Peg, do you have others?
Nope, all good.
So as you mentioned it, let me make sure I have my agenda up. As you mentioned, your town administrator report, annual town meeting agenda. You actually have a draft. It's obviously not in a form that would, in an early draft, but it lists the various articles that we're thinking about.
Yep. So those are the final ones. I compiled everything that's been submitted. I don't see anything overly controversial, relatively straightforward. I don't know if anyone has questions. It's in the drive, but I will have it written up in a formal warrant version for you this coming Monday.
Do we actually have prior year bills we have to pay off?
There is potentially one. We're trying to figure out if there's a way to pay it without it being a prior year bill, but it's looking like it may have to be a prior year
I
bill.
think at some point we just say none and see what happens when they take us to court to try to get it. But yes,
Well, this one's a little bit weird
they're
because
all weird.
yeah, it's actually a stipend for an employee. So we're trying to work through it, but I think we're going to end up contractually owing it.
The
So if there's
amendment to this,
32 items, when, is there any discussion about a two-nighter? Should we start to put that in play now?
I don't think we should, not yet, not until we end up at 40.
well, some of it for me is going to be once we see what the school's going to do. If we think the school budget's going to be a 2-hour debate, then we
Oh,
might start
yeah.
off by saying, find a split. And so Kristen, when you're ordering these are sort of in order now, but I'd sort of make sure like all the fiscal ones are together. And then at the end of the year, sort of the ones that have to do with bylaws and policies and zoning maps sort of things, so that people interested in sort of policy stuff can come to night 2, people interested in budget stuff can come to night 1, and those of us who are interested in everything can come to both nights.
Absolutely. So I've actually started breaking them out into what's 23 and what's 24. And then I
Yeah.
do have the zoning and the other bylaws at
Yeah.
the end. That's exactly how I was doing it. So I'm
The-
glad you
the
guys like it
amending the
that way.
The amending the senior work-off program is like the only one I don't think I know anything about.
We
Uh,
talked about that a little while you were, oh, sorry, Peg, go ahead.
No, I chuckled because, yeah, that was last week, Scott, or 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll watch the meeting then.
Preview of coming attractions. Yeah, we may have to look at the dollar amounts in light of minimum wage increases and how we account for that. And if we want to continue to go by a maximum set amount of dollars, or if we want to go by hours and minimum.
Hours.
Mhm, mhm.
So it may go from 125 hours to 100 hours to accommodate the increase in
Yeah.
minimum wage.
Right.
But
There was
Victoria,
also,
I think, was saying that no one was close, so we
Right.
should be okay.
yeah, she also made a recommendation to reduce the residency requirement. It's at 5 years right now, but there's a lot of seniors coming in the new senior housing that haven't been here for 5 years because the housing is new that could potentially benefit from the program. It's not a state requirement, so that was just a recommendation she made.
Okay. We can go into more of them later, but so this looks good as a good start. Again, we have like 3 weeks before this has to be sort of printed and starting the mailing process, so.
Yes.
I'm pretty confident we'll come to some kind of an agreement and work it
Yeah.
out with the schools.
Oh.
So
And I'm always
Yeah.
paranoid. I'm always paranoid in March that we will never
I
get
don't
an
think-
agenda that is set in a budget that is done and magically it all happens, so.
well,
It-
you know,
it-
and if 1/12 budget is very difficult, with this- that kind of an increase. So I think we'll
Yep.
be able to work. I mean, really, 112 budget, that's not even close to what they're looking for. So I feel confident they'll.
Kristen, can you do me a favor? And I didn't want to say it while they were there, but on slide 19, Tohoto was spelled Tahonto instead of Tahanto. There were 3 instances of Tohoto misspelling. So slide 19.
Slide 19, sure.
Thank you.
And I think somebody needs to be reminded that it's Berlin Memorial School, not Berlin Elementary School.
Did I say it wrong? I feel like I might have said it wrong too. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I think we will definitely get it done. That's my focus this week. I actually hope we get 1.5 feet of snow tomorrow and I can write the warrant. That would be amazing. Because unfortunately the budget was done, and what happened with the school, and including Assabet, has thrown a wrench into everything. So that's sort of delayed things, but we'll get there. We always do somehow.
Yep.
New business, approve a special event, the use of public roads for Jake's Sake 5K road race.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve Jake's Sake 5K road race.
Seconded.
Let's see, I don't think we need more discussion. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone eye.
So that passes. We don't do too many of these events in town, do we? I feel like there's 2 or 3 of these in town. There's some places in the state that they happen every weekend and it really bothers a lot of people, but especially this one seems to be in a different part of town than some of the others too, so. Next agenda item is housing trust appointments.
Okay, so this is this trust was created at town meeting at last May. It consists of 5 members, 4 at large and 1 select board member. They have staggered initial terms and then 3-year terms thereafter. We did advertising and have received 2 applications for the 4 at-large positions. So the names that we're putting forth would be Lisa Wysocki and Lauren Kukla. In terms of staggered terms, it's up to the board how they want to handle it. The way I've kind of done it is, if you like the applicants, the person who applied first gets the longer term when you're initially starting something, because there's no real, or you can pull names out of a hat if you'd like. But you also need to appoint a board member to the trust as well. So I don't know what you want to do for the board, but that term would go through 5/31 of 24. And then you would have another one that would go through 25 and 26.
So you're asking us to decide who goes in what slot?
I can make a recommendation.
That would be great.
So the first applicant we received was from Lisa Wysocki. So my recommendation would be to have her term go through May 31 of 26. And then Lauren Kukla, May 31 of 25. And then whoever you'd like on the select board through May 31 of 24.
Scott, are you interested in doing that?
I actually am.
Okay, good. So I would make the motion to appoint Scott as the select board member and Lisa Wysocki and Lauren Kukla to the Housing Trust on the recommendation of Kristen.
I'll second it.
Am I allowed to vote? Because is there a conflict of interest for me voting on my own? No. I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone eye.
Bigger question, is Ross allowed to vote? Luckily, he's still on vacation.
It's only quarterly, I think. Or
I know.
usually.
The letter to the Marble Family Foundation for the Mabel Felton Marble Memorial Scholarship.
I understand this is an annual occurrence that you all may know more about than I do.
And so we're going to make a motion to approve the letter of thanks to the Marble family and the application and the press release for 2023 Mabel Felton Marble Memorial Scholarship.
Yep. And for the deadline of an application deadline of April 21st at noon.
Yes.
Second.
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
And I believe the letter of thanks is already drafted and ready for signature at the select board office.
Is
Correct.
that all three of us need to come in and do that?
There's a signature line for all three of us. It'd be nice.
Okay. Will do.
Board question, comments, and liaison updates. I am sorry to say that I have not even been back. I've been back a little over 24 hours, but I've not caught up on all the meetings and other stuff that I should be as of yet. So I don't have anything for tonight.
And I don't have anything either. I asked my questions during
Yeah.
town administrator.
Take it away,
report.
Peg.
I do.
You've been
All
quiet.
right.
You've been quiet tonight, so here's your chance.
All right, not too many. So the ADA work, the project work is being done. Unfortunately, you know, to many people, you're not going to notice the changes. Towel dispensers removed down to meet requirements. A few other items were moved on height. This morning, Kristen approved purchase of roughly $2,000 out of our, is it 2,000? Yeah, $2,000 out of our grant to buy things like coat hooks and door pulls. Because again, think about it, coat hooks are too high, so they need to come down. So we're not going to pull it out and make a hole in the door. We're going to buy another one. The door pulls, they need to basically, you know, be something that you can slide your hand in and pull it. And then the same thing with the lock. Currently, you got to twist it. You know, you can't have that. So again, you need some sort of mechanism that folds over. So that'll be approved. We're also going to buy a whopping one electrical door unit to see if it works. Why buy 6 of them when we can just buy one? So we'll talk to an electrician about that, get a quote. We did have a plumber come in, and Victoria and I and Fred met with, his name is Adam, I forget his last name, last week, and we did a bit tour of the building. Unfortunately, it's one of those, you know, you come in and you think it's simple to say, hey, I need you to wrap the pipes and I need a new faucet. Well, when you take the wrapping off the pipe, you find that the pipes are leaking and the pipes are deteriorating. So what Adam is going to do when he sends in a quote for wrapping in faucets is that he'll send a separate quote to Fred to say it was basically rinse and repeat. Whatever bathroom we walked into, all the pipes were leaking and turning that lovely shade of green. So he'll put forth a quote for that, you know, see what Fred can do, maybe go back to, you know, capital to say we need X amount of dollars, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to replace the faucet and redo the wrapping if the pipes are leaking. So we're going to have to figure out how that's going to be done. You know, even went into the cells, you know, at the jail, and those are definitely deteriorating. He said that because he works with other towns, Stowe, Sudbury, so he's done this. It's not like this is his first rodeo. He said that those bathroom sinks unfortunately go for about 10 grand each. So that will also be included in the additional information that he'll send to Fred. So we may unfortunately not get through all of what I intended to get through for 88, depending upon what comes back. But you know what? It gives us good information and better information that when this grant comes up again, that we really hit it and ask for it. And if we can't do as much as we want, Victoria is even going to look into something as simple, it's not simple, but listening devices and or magnifying glasses. So which listening devices were on the list, but I hadn't included it. But it's something that we can look at to do that. And yeah, we're not going to go over the $8,000. I don't want to give any money back, but you know, there's enough little things, and we're staying away from 1870 and doing anything with that just because it's a historical building. And my giant concern, along with June and Kristen's, is that as soon as you open that Pandora's box, that somebody's going to come winging in to say, hey, no, guess what else needs to be done? So for now, it's just going to be highway barn and town offices for that. Waiting on Assabet Man to give us a workup on the potential signs. I know last week was school week, pending snowstorm. So I'll reach out to him. Woo Sox, they sent out the link. I published it in town. I gave all you guys a copy of it. Waiting on the brochure for them to come up with. When they do, I'll start to hit the streets hard and go to baseball games, pass them out to parents. We'll get them to the school, get them in backpacks. I've talked to Evie at 19 Carter. She'll put some up. I'm sure I can talk to Ed, get some at the general store, probably at the library, so we can promote this. I bought a bunch of tickets. I know some other folks in town, a bunch bought of tickets. Hopefully, I think right now we're probably up to about $100 going back to the food pantry for that. So hopefully we can get that to go higher and obviously beat Boylston. And then the town hall cleanup. So put a plan together, passed it by Kristen. I'm going to meet with Sandra this week, hopefully, to talk to her what the plans are. And they're not gigantic plans. It's really cleaning out the crawl space underneath the stairs on the first floor. There's stuff in there, but I want to meet with a couple people from historical, because I don't want to be the one to say, well, that looks like junk, and throw it out and realize it's not junk, that there was just no space for it. So it got shoved under the stairs. So they'll take a look at that. And then once we can clean that out and remove some of those items, that means that some of the items in the second floor closet can be brought downstairs, which means that rec can have a little bit more room. So boom chakalaka, that's all good. And I will put in, once everything's in place, Kristen, I'll put in a formal request to you and Mr. Fred to have Highway come and take all the paint that is at least 10 to 12 years old and dispose of it properly and move it around. So slowly but surely, we will get buildings cleaned up. That's all I got.
Good. And although most people might not notice some of those ADA stuff, the people who will notice are probably those who need it and will appreciate it. So it's very good that's being done.
Yep.
Well, great. I think that is our meeting for tonight. We're hopefully done with holidays and other stuff for a bit, so we'll have regular Monday meetings for a bit here.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Let's see, Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.